It's the Cavaliers Basketball Club Podcast.
It's basketball time to kill.
Love picks up Curry.
Kyrie Irving from downtown. Up for the layup. Oh, blocked by James.
It's over. The 52-year drought is over. The Cavaliers have won the NBA championship.
Cleveland, this is for you.
Sexton works on Irving. He knocks it down.
Heat check time.
Allen to Garland, 1 second left from midcourt.
Strongest goal. Oh, what a rejection by Mobley.
And he throws the hammer down.
The shoot-around.
Welcome back to the club. We're here to discuss one of the Cavs players that we think made the biggest difference in 21-22.
On this episode, we felt it was important to highlight the player who probably took the biggest leap of any Cavalier, Darius Garland.
Does Darius Garland have the potential to start being named in the same breath as Trae Young and Ja Morant?
He has skill sets that kind of overlap with these two players. With Trae Young, an issue that Darius has, Young is about almost 2 full assists per game higher this past season than Darius was. Darius is going to kind of move in the upper echelon and being discussed with Trae Young. He would need to get more assists and execute more of his passing capability and kind of show that off. And with Ja, really a score-first point guard. And Darius isn't that, but he has the potential to go off in games. So to be kind of compared more to him, he would need to have a higher scoring output. I think he has the potential to improve or increase in both of those abilities. We've seen Darius take over games with his passing skill set, especially with how he's able to work the mid-range and get some really nice lobs to Mobley and Allen. And we've seen him get more and more comfortable with his step-back three. And I feel his three-point shot just gets prettier and prettier every season. I mean, the lob, the arc on that shot is just beautiful. He just needs to get a little more confident in how he's executing some of that stuff. And hopefully his numbers will increase that much. That's if the Cavs ask him to do that. It's kind of the other thing that we'll get into probably more in discussing Garland is those are two teams that ask Ja Morant and Trae Young to run everything, offensively especially. And we want Darius to be the primary initiator on offense, but we're getting Colin Sexton back. We want Evan Mobley to develop more. We've talked about how Jarrett Allen can be an offensive hub as well in the post. He kind of has to balance a lot, and so his numbers might never reach that level of an output of those two guys, but his wins and execution might get to that level where he's talked in the same breath as, oh, here's a leader, here's a point guard who just gets it done. Maybe it's not the highest output in scoring, but he's got 15, 20 assists in a game, and that's why they win versus dropping 35.
I would say that the question itself, does Darius have the potential to start being named in the same breath as these two players? I think he already is, and I think he's being named basically kind of in the middle of them. Trae Young is not as good of a shooter. He's shorter. I don't know what the maximum potential is for Trae. I don't have a lot of positive feelings about him. So I'm not the best person to sit and dissect his game. But somebody like Ja Morant, I think we would really love for Darius to be Ja, but that's part of the reason why we're excited to have Sexton back, like you mentioned. Darius isn't Ja. Darius is more of a team-first basketball mentality player. He also just hasn't taken that big of a leap. I mean, the leap between the sophomore year and the third season for Ja is just huge. When you look at his stats, he's injury prone, and it's kind of amazing that they still win when he's not out there. And whereas I don't think the Cavs won anything when Darius couldn't play that night. You know, there's comparisons for sure, but I think they're very uniquely two different players. And I think that Darius did enough in the season, especially once Sexton went down. He did enough to put the team on his back and have those 20, 25, 30-point nights, shoot in the 45% range from normal distance, and then 38.5% or so from three. He is steadily climbing in his efficiency from shooting. He came into the league being touted as this guy that could hit it from anywhere, and I saw a guy that struggled with his shot. And I'm very impressed that in year 3, he became a 46% shooter. It would be nice for him to be above 40% from 3, especially from how many that he likes to take. He needs to emulate Steph Curry a little bit more with that confidence back there. But overall, I think, yes, he's earned from this season alone, he's earned the right to be talked about in the same breath as these players. And I would say over Trae Young in many ways. Because Trae, I think, he was a lot of hype last season. And this season, I don't think he stepped up and met that hype. And he shot very poorly in the playoff run that they had. I don't think he handles the ball as well as Darius. He turns the ball over a lot more. So again, I would place him above Trae, but below Ja. And therefore, in conversation. Whereas last season, no, I was still skeptical, as we talked about, where he would fall. But now I'm curious to see him be moved into a 2-guard position when Sexton comes back, and Sexton can play the point. What do you think about that? When Sexton is whole, do you think that there'll be times that they'll run offensive sets, or they'll actually start games or play rotations more frequently in the game, where Darius is actually playing the 2 more traditionally and Sexton is at the 1, especially if the rumors are true that Darius has grown 3 inches?
There should be more times when they have Sexton being the initiator, for sure. Similar to what they did with Rubio. Once Sexton went down, Rubio would initiate the offense and Darius would stay on the floor and play more off ball.
Because we've talked about Sexton being more of a guy coming off the bench this season, possibly.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
And so if he does that, then especially Garland could slide over to the 2 when he rotates in.
That's something where Darius, I think, has an edge. Darius is probably a little bit taller than both these guys. I know that Morant is a freak of nature athletically. However, he doesn't need to be as nuanced in other positions right now because of how he plays. Morant off ball isn't maybe as deadly or what Memphis is looking for, where Darius, when he comes off a screen or a curl, he can hit that shot. Sexton's proven that he is a solid enough passer and can understand the game well enough now. He'll be able to find Darius very well. I have a feeling that Darius is going to prove that he can play with anybody on the floor. And that's where I think that he could become even quote-unquote greater than Morant and Young long-term, is something about his game, the way he kind of understands where everyone needs to be. I could see where you're right. He maybe is always the quote-unquote starting point guard, but similar to Steph, he brought him up. Steph knows where everybody is cutting, what back screen is going to happen, everything like that. And that's where Darius could move into an on-the-court general, but doesn't necessarily need the ball the whole time, right? We saw that with LeBron. LeBron needed the ball a lot, but there were times where he was dictating the play 5 seconds before the ball was even brought up the court. LeBron knew exactly where to go with the ball. Darius could move into that. They should be getting ready to have Sexton and Garland use each other more off ball and on ball, both of them, for sure.
What 2 or 3 things could Garland do to move his game forward?
Well, like we mentioned, Darius had an unbelievable season. He took all of the steps that we wanted him to take going into year 3. From his freshman year, averaging 12 points, to his sophomore year, averaging 17, and his junior year, averaging 21, almost 22. And from there, his assists have continued to climb. He's at 8.6 now per game. His free throw shooting is almost at 90%. His three-point shooting is at 38%, 37% for his career so far. And his overall shooting is about 44%, but that's because he was a real stinker his freshman year at 40%. I think if he takes a leap going into year 4 and improves his shooting by about 2 percentage points across the board, gets his points average up around 24 to 27, that would be ideal to match more of what Ja's been doing as far as his stats, right? The 3 things, I'm going to say 3 things that he could do to improve his game, to do the things that I just mentioned stats-wise. Strength and endurance, number 1. That's because I see a player that they put him out there in the start of the game, but before you know it, he's the first guy subbed out. And I know he puts a lot of energy out there. He sprints a lot up and down the court. I think he gets away with a lot of traveling like that too, but they all do. So I see a player that can't go the distance, and we especially saw that at the end of the season when, yes, they did play him more minutes, and he was out there really killing himself. And without him, we wouldn't have really won any of the games that we did win. But he only averaged 2 more minutes a game this year, at 35 minutes a game. I know he got to pace himself more to start the year, and by the end of the year, he was averaging a lot more than that. But, you know, you're a young guy. You're never going to be able to do this at a greater clip than what you're doing it now. So you got to put a little more muscle on so you can challenge and be more present with some of these bigger players. And you got to go into the gym and work on your endurance, your conditioning as far as being able to go the distance on the court. Because some nights we just need you to put in a full 40. Now, shot selection is also on my list because he's shooting at 46% for the year, which is great, but I'd love to see him at 48 or 49%. And I know that's a lot, but a smart basketball player can get that number up. And he's got time to work on that as a player. Some of the short basket shots that he's taken, he's missed this year. So if he just hits those more frequently, I think he'll get that number up. And one final thing on shot selection, he's making about 8 per game, but he's taking about 17. So I'd like to see him make about 10 or 11 if he's going to take 17, 18 shots. I know that's not every night, but that's what I'd like to see more often than not. A high efficiency of him shooting. So 9 of 18, 9 of 19, if he's going to take that many shots. And then assists overall, 10 per game, that would be ideal. If he can average over 10, then we're going to be an unstoppable team. And he got close at 8.6. That was a big jump from 6.1 the year before. He's really figuring it out. If he could be at 10 or 11 on average and get that double-double, it's important for him to achieve something like that, especially when we're also asking Allen to continue his double-double with his rebounds and his points. Sexton will probably not be required to do a double-double, but it'd be nice to have some triple-doubles out of him from here and there. So, yeah, we'll see what we get overall. But I think those 3 things from Darius are ideal for him to work on. What do you think?
He is the all-star coming back into this next season, so the expectation is that he needs to be more efficient, he needs to be more fit, and he needs to increase his passing numbers as well. I would also like him to shoot more threes. He's increased that number every year. He's at 6.7 attempts last season, but he's shooting them at a good percentage. I want him to shoot even a couple more. Him knocking down 1 or 2 more threes a game will open up the offense even more for him and Mobley and Allen inside the paint because defenses won't be able to slag off. I actually really just have one takeaway, one answer overall to this question, which is he needs to know when to take over the game. And I brought this up a little bit in the Allen episode. We've talked about this with LeBron. There were too many times that we saw Darius pass or shoot at the wrong time. And you could just tell, even with the ebb and flow of the game, that it wasn't the correct decision. And again, he's a young point guard. He's trying to figure all of that out. I felt that there were instances where either he felt like it was on his shoulders, so he needed to do something about it, or he was told to defer, or his natural inclination is to defer. He needs to study all of Ricky Rubio's tape. If Ricky is going to be rehabbing, I hope Darius goes over to Spain and hangs out with Rubio for a couple of weeks or something, because you saw that that's where Darius could still expand his game a little bit, is the nuance of knowing what to do at the right exact time. Because there were a lot of times this past season when Rubio was healthy, he was asked to be the primary ball handler at the end of games, which isn't a knock on Darius because Darius is so young. Everything that you brought up is also, I think, the stuff that's going to help him accomplish that. Being more fit, so he's more present. But also, if he's more fit, he'll be able to be a better ball handler, passing the ball at the right time, all of that stuff. He just needs to know when to execute at the right exact time to win these games.
I think that one of the things that was lacking from our team this past season, and rightly so, because injuries were a huge issue, broken record. We needed a Mr. Fourth Quarter. We always had that with LeBron. We always had a guy that said, nah, we're going to win. I'm going to put this team on my back. And we had a lot of players this past season that could give us great first, second, and third quarters. But the fourth quarter was a real slog. Everybody was tired by then, and nobody really stepped up to finish the game a lot of the time. Now, we had some close matchups. We had overtime wins, so I'm not devaluing kind of what we were able to achieve. But I just saw, especially in the last stretch, the last 25, 30 games, we didn't have anybody that could fit this definition that I'm asking for now. And I would say that it has to be Garland and it has to be Sexton when he comes back. If that's what they see themselves as being within the NBA, the kind of superstars that they should be, they need to step up and say, "No, this is my quarter." And most superstars say that at the end of the game, give me the ball. And it's not just the last second or the last shot. It's the entire quarter if you're hungry enough. And I think Allen could be a close third too, which we talked about, that he needs to have those games too, where he goes, "No, I'm willing us to a win." That would be very important, I think, for Darius, that get a little bit more tenacious, a little bit more aggressive, and go out there and, it's your ball. Go get it.
The final seconds.
What grade would you give Darius Garland this season?
Easily an A. I think he did stuff that you and I never really expected. We thought that he would improve. I didn't necessarily think he would become an all-star this season. He came in and did so many things better and showed that he was more of a leader on this team and wanted players to buy in. And I think he deserves a lot of credit, especially with Sexton going out, and then Rubio and Allen, and Mobley got hurt for a while. And I think actually Kevin Love probably had the best health the entire season. And so, yeah, I would give Darius an A.
Yeah, absolutely an A. Close to an A+ if you could give it. But he's still young. There's still room for improvement, as we have stated in this podcast. There's two things that I want to point out. One, that it's not a reflection of this season alone. Since 2019 to 2022, he's had 70 20-plus point games. And he had no 30-point games before this season. This season, he had 9. So that was the bar that I wanted him to get over. That was the thing that I said last year. Please crack a 30 for me. And he did 9 times. And that's not a ton, but that's a lot for a dude that had never had them before. That's a great sign. And again, statistically, he improved in every measure. He was a leader. He achieved a lot this season, and he deserves the A.
Will Garland eventually get more calls to get to the line next season?
Yes, I think all players eventually reach that point where they're respected enough within the league, within the referee circle, that when they complain about what they're going through during the game, the refs will start looking for it and will make more calls. It's unfortunate that we're such a young team and so many of our players haven't achieved that rite of passage yet. And they say that it doesn't exist, but I've always seen example. And it does make sense at the end of the day, because I think it makes sense that they haven't achieved the status level yet within the league that they're going to get those calls. But again, it's only a matter of time. Darius Garland is a all-star now and is somebody that is in the top 10 discussion for the point guards in the league, I think. At least top 10 for sure. He should definitely see more calls this coming season. But he has to stay aggressive. He's got to go out there and not only work to have the fouls happen, but also then turn around and make sure that the refs start respecting his game a little more.
Yeah, I think this is an issue where he'll get more respect from the refs for sure. And I also think there were times last year and even the year before that where Darius would kind of stare off into space and just look really perturbed. And there's ways that he can change his reaction, flail a little bit more, make a sound or something to that effect, where he's actually drawing more attention to the fouls that are happening against him. I also am hopeful that Mobley will become a better screener and that the Cavs might also get another backup center who is a good screener as well, because there were times when Darius was definitely getting fouled off ball. And if they're able to kind of, as a team, collectively allow Darius to get more free, then that'll be helpful as well, because the fouls will look much more obvious because the players will be trying to fight through tougher and harder screens and actually pulling his jersey and whatnot. But yeah, he should definitely, based on the respect factor, and more veteran savvy.
Do you think Darius Garland can shoot over 40% from three?
Yeah, for sure. His shot profile is perfect. I mean, it goes over many different heights of players that are wings, centers who come out on him. His arc is just tremendous, and he is so confident, and when he's on, his shot goes in from 35, 36 feet away easily. So I think that on some level, it's almost an imperative, but yes.
Yes, I think the gold standard set now in today's NBA, whether we like it or not, has been set by Steph Curry. Everybody wants that kind of dynamic point guard, that shooter mentality, that deep three-point shot. And Garland has proven that he can do that. He can basically jack it up from half court if he wants to. But he's got to get his efficiency up. When you look at Steph Curry, for his career, he is hovering at about 42%. Now, this year is actually down to 38%, which is about 4 or 5 percentage points lower than what he normally will average. And but some years he had 45%, 3 or 4 seasons in a row, 45%. So that's, to me, the bar that I want to see Garland aim for. Not only get to 40, but then go 41, 42, 43, and at some point in his career average close to 44. Because even though he's grown, he's still a little bit undersized, and his quickness, his ability to kind of separate himself from the defense, but then be able to be deadly from anywhere on the court is extremely helpful in today's modern NBA. He's got to get that efficiency up for sure, but he can do it.
On this young roster, can Darius manage everyone's ego?
Yes, I think so, because the Cavaliers have done an excellent job of creating a team that, to me, at least from exterior vantage points, I can't find an ego on the team. Not a negative one, anyway. Everybody has some level of ego, and it's important for them to care about their careers, care about the trajectory of their name within this sport, because if they play it the right way, you're going to be immortalized in this profession. So it makes a lot of sense to me that he'll be able to manage everyone's ego, because I think everyone's checking it at the door. They love to play together. They seem to take adversity in stride. And even some of those games when they got embarrassed and they only scored 6 or 8 points in the fourth quarter, I never really saw them pointing a lot of fingers other than just directly at themselves, and then saying, hey, but we got each other and we're going to make this work. I think Garland having to be the leader this season helped him step up in that role in a way that maybe before he would have continued to defer to Sexton. So I think that probably is a plus for Sexton being injured. And now if they can kind of co-share the team when he comes back, that would be ideal. I don't really see ego being a problem on this team.
Yeah, I completely agree. I don't see ego being an issue. They might have some hiccups if next season doesn't start off as well as they expected, but they know that they can play well enough, and that when they execute well enough and actually turn to themselves and look at themselves to maintain a better offense or shut teams down on defense, it's up to them. I think that the team does that. I think Darius has already managed a lot of expectation and led this team into so much success already that he'll continue that, because that's what he's expected to do. That's what the organization expects from the top down, from the GM to all the way down to the end of the bench and Brandon Goodwin. So, yeah, I completely agree.
Thank you for listening to the Cavaliers Basketball Club podcast. Let's go Cavs!